Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you something very special, and the thing that makes this special, the thing is a fly if you haven't figured that out, but the thing that makes this fly special, despite it catches a lot of fish, it's very efficient, then it's the backstory of this fly. And the backstory of this fly is that it originates all the way back from the Viking ages, where this Viking named Ivar, he was when he was out on the sea battling their enemies or hoarding or something like that, he would drag a fly behind his boat, and this fly was made from a shelf shelf branch that was hollow, and a rope will probably go through that like a tube fly, and then he will use a hook made from moose bone, and on this shelf branch he will tie on some blue yarn and these blue necks from this special type of bird. But that bird is extinct now, so we can't use that. Ivar, he caught a lot of fish, especially tuna. So they never ran out of food. But their enemies often ran out of food because their flies wasn't as efficient as Ivar's fly was. So they won accordingly a lot of battles out on the sea due to starvation of their enemies. And the way Ivar actually died was because, accordingly, that a whale took his fly and dragged their boat under the sea, so they all drowned. That's a lovely way to end as a fly fisherman, you could say. Ivar, he had a grandson. I don't know how many grands, but it's a lot. And he was called Björn Ivar, and he found these old texts of this great pattern for a fly. So he started to try to make some flies that would look like that fly, and maybe in smaller sizes as well, because he used it for salmon in the rivers up in Norway, and it was actually really good. It was called the Salmon Slayer, actually, something like that. And some Danes suddenly found out about this and tried to mimic that pattern or make it a little bit their own, or a variation of it, actually, as we often do as fly tyers. And so did some river fishers up from the River Cow, or that area up there, and they came up with the Blue Ivar, and it's a very nice pattern. I make my own variation of it, but it mainly consists of orange in the rear, a blue body and blue wing, and a black wing and black Fronthackle. So I like to make my own variations of patterns most of the times as close as possible, but I like to adapt them to my own type of fishing and fly tying, the way I like to do it, and I know a lot of other fly tyers do that as well. That's often why you can tell, you can pick up a fly and say that's that guy who have tied it. Like if you look at a Picasso painting, then you also gonna know who the artist is, Picasso. So that's the fun thing about it. But let's get to it. Let's tie this beast of a fly. a Blue Ivar variation. So we'll start off with, I've already cut the plastic tubing, 3mm in 3 centimeters, and I've just etched it here instead of just a clean cut, and a inner tube, also 3 or 3.5 centimeters. And then I've put on a 4mm tungsten tubing on. So I'm gonna apply the thread, just go between the tubings here. Oh, I have to adjust my bobbin holder. So there we go, trim that off, secure the tungsten tube. And the thread I'm using is just a Uni-Thread 80 in white, probably one of my favorites. And then we're gonna cover the tungsten tubing here with some thread, so it's not that slippery. So there we go. And we're gonna move our thread back, and I'm just gonna measure. It has to be 1.5 approximately centimeters from the end, and that's around there. So normally I've just gonna do some long turns, and then when I measure, then I can see on the thread where it approximately is 1.5 centimeters. I'm gonna take some mini Flatbraid from Hairline, this Flouro orange. It's a really nice color. So tie that in with a couple of loose wraps. I'm just gonna pull it to the ends and then secure it. So then I'm gonna just turn the vise like this. Then we're gonna make the butt with this Flatbraid, approximately like 0.5 centimeter or something like that. Going backwards and then forwards again. So we're gonna tie it off like that, cut it off. So when we're gonna tie forwards, approximately 1 centimeter. Then we're gonna take some Flouro fiber and hot orange for the tail. So find a decent amount, and don't take too much because we're gonna double it, and sometimes like the fibers are not in full length, so I'm just gonna check if there's some that's too short. So find the middle, tie it down in the middle, make some wraps backwards, fold the fibers backwards, and then we're gonna tie it down. So that makes the tail really strong, so it doesn't get pulled out. So like this. Then I'm not gonna use this scissors because it's serrated on one side. It grabs really good onto the materials, but when tapering the tail you have to like slide the scissor. So I use this one instead because it's very sharp, but it's not serrated, so it doesn't really grip the materials and stop the scissor. So I can just pull it backwards like that. and the tail just have to be a bit longer than the tubing, like a centimeter. So, final taper. Then we're gonna take another type of flat braid. This is the one from Mikkeli and Sealice Silver. And the reason why I use that is because it's very strong and we're gonna make the rib from it. Or use it as a rib. So, tie it down on the underside. There we go. And then some, and then tie it down here. Nice and firmly. So it really sits there. This is what's gonna make the body very strong. So it's very important that it really sits there. So there we go. We're gonna give it some varnish to strengthen it. There we go. And I'm gonna use Uni-Mylar. This is a two-toned, so one side is orange and the other side is Peacock. And we want the Peacock side to stick out. So when we tie it down, we tie it down with the Peacock, no, the orange side upwards. So there we go. So when we turn it around the fly, then it's the Peacock side going out towards you. All the way down to the tail and back up again. So tie it down with the thread. Just gonna give it 3 wraps like that. Cut it off and then really tie it down. There we go. Going forward, I'm gonna add some dubbing. And for these type of flies with a very thick body, and when you're using dubbing, then it's a good idea to actually start in the front with the dubbing, move backwards and then forwards again. Makes it easier to give the body some volume. And also if I just made one layer over and really scratch it out in the end, then sometimes you take out too much dubbing and then you can see the thread and the tubing underneath. And we're just gonna continue a bit over the mylar here in the back. So it's gonna cover up the tie-in that we made. Like that. Now we can move forward again. Oh yeah, I'm using the SSS dubbing from Rearbody in clear water blue. That is the perfect color for this pattern. And you can also use the glitz dubbing. It's actually preferred, but this is the dubbing that I had, and it works fine. So why not? And we'll take a rooster feather from Coq de Lion in orange. So I'm just gonna strip some fibers off. There we go. Tie it in here in the front. Give it some good turns like that. And the first couple of turns, I'm gonna fold the fibers back while it's here in the front, and then we'll move backwards. All the way down to the tail and the Flatbraid. So when I make the last turn with the feather, I unloose the Flatbraid here, grab the tip of the feather, then I spin the Flatbraid so it becomes thin, and then I really tighten it because it has to lock the feather down. So then we go up over the body, and when you cross this over, the Flatbraid over the feather, you have to move it the same direction as you did with the feather when you tie it or turn that over or down. And then we'll end up here. See if we can get nicely through the hackle. So, like that. Tie it down, and when it's really secured, fold everything backwards except for the hackle stem and the Flatbraid, and now we'll fold the Flatbraid backwards like that and tie it down. So, and then we will brush the body out. There we go. Cut off the tip of the feather down at the end and in the front. So we're gonna give it some varnish to strengthen it. Like that. So then we're gonna just clear the table. There's dubbing everywhere. So, there we go. And we will take a Roosterhackle in Silver Dr. Blue. And the longest fibers here have to be as long as the orange Roosterhackle, or a bit longer. Then we're gonna fold the feather here so that we have 3 centimeters. Cut off the tip so we have a V, and we're gonna use as the tie-in point. So use the scissor on one side of the feather, and it's gonna be a lot easier to fold them backwards as we tie it in. And then we're gonna use this feather to cover up all the tying thread right there. So I'm just gonna use the whole feather. Tie it in, cut it off. There we go. So that's the first part of the fly. I usually, when I tie these, I tie a bunch and I take them in steps. So I'll tie this, make a whip finish, and then tie a lot of them, and then I will end off tying in the wings. Okay, so I finished the fly, but unfortunately my camera shut off. But no worries. As I said, when I tie these, I tie a bunch of them. So I have one more body, and we're just gonna start with the wing on this one then. Just thread on. There we go. So the wing consists of some blue Arctic fox. So we'll take a bunch of that. So comb out all the underfur. And comb the tip of the fur. So there we go. So now we have to make a taper into the wing, and the way we're gonna do that is because we're gonna make it a bit differently than you normally would. There's only 2 layers in the wing, despite it's a pretty large tube fly. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna use my thumb and my index finger and push and draw in the hairs. So the hairs on top become longer and the hairs in the bottom become shorter. That way we're gonna get a nice taper into the wing without making a lot of layers. So we'll check the length, and the length has to, the tip of the wing have to be just as long, or maybe a little bit longer than the tail. And then we will reverse tie it, so we switch it around, and now we have to be careful that now the shortest hairs have to point upwards and the longer ones have to be in the bottom. Okay, we'll tie it in. So, and then I will cut off the excess hair. If there's some hair left, don't worry, it's just gonna help raising the wing a little bit, but you should try to remove as much as possible. That's also why I twist it in my fingers, because then it's a lot easier to cut it as far down as possible. So then we're gonna fold the wing backwards. That's why it's called reverse tying. So I'm gonna put my thread on top here. Look if the taper is good. Looks decent. Usually I put my fingers on top of it, press it a little bit down, loosen the wraps. So the thread loosens up a little bit, and then there we go. There we go. And we're gonna take some angel hair. This is in Mikkeli blue, the color Mikkeli blue from Flouro. Just take a good amount on these typical knife flyers. It's good if there's some flesh in it, so it reflects as much as possible. And the flash can also be a bit longer, because the top wing is going to be longer. Then we're gonna take some Krystal flash. I have this one in blue. If you're using just a normal pearl one, it's gonna be just fine. But if you have the blue, use the blue, you know. Okay, taking 2 strands, one on each side of the wing. No, not one on each side, 2 on each side. And we're just gonna fold it backwards so it doubles up. And the length, that actually looks good. Great. So then we're gonna take a Schlappen feather. I'm not gonna use a lot, but just a little bit. You can use these smaller ones, small or shorter fibers from the hackle, so we actually have one Schlappen feather for the rest of the fly. So tie that in. Break the feather stems. And okay, need some room here. Fold the feather back. This is just to cover the in-tying of the hackle. Oh, the wing, sorry. So 2 on top and 1 here in the bottom, so we can tie it in on the inner tube. So 1, 2, 3. Alright, there we go. Then we're gonna take some black marble fox, and we're using marble fox because it's long. Take a nice amount. So like this. Cut that off. Then we're gonna comb the hair. It can be fine just to take, if you're using a comb, take a little bit at the time. Otherwise your comb is just gonna get stuck if you're trying to comb the whole bunch of hair at once. So now we're gonna see how the hairs curve. I'm gonna pull some of them out. There we go. There we go. So like that. And then we're gonna do the same. Gonna, I don't know what to say, but push and pull maybe the wing like that. Then we're gonna cheat with the tapering. We're just gonna take some of the longer hairs from the side and leave behind the shorter hairs on the side. So like that. Turn it around, upside down. Oh, we'll check it's long enough. That looks good. And tie that in. Tie forwards, and then backwards again. Then we have to see if we can trim as much off this excess hair. There we go. Looks nice. Fold it backwards. Give it a couple of wraps with the thread and then spread the hairs out like you want them to be. Take back a couple of wraps, loosen the thread and tighten again. And then the hairs is sitting absolutely stunning. And we're gonna take some Gliss and Glow Flash, almost forgot the name there, in the color MOP, Mother of Pearl. So it's really stands out. This one is really curly. I don't know why I bought it like that, but in the water it's gonna be no problem at all. So one strand on one side and another strand on the other side. So like that. And then we're gonna take some Peacock eye, find 3 hurls from the top. From the top of the eye you can see they have a natural curve to it, so it can sit on top of the fly. If you take hurls from the bottom of the feather, then they're very straight, so they're just gonna stick up from the fly or the wing. That doesn't look pretty in the box. Doesn't matter in the water actually. So separate them a little bit so they don't stick together. Then I make a loose turn and tighten it up. There we go. So you have 1 hurl on the top and 2 a little bit out on the side. Oh man. So trim these off. Then we're gonna take, where is my, there it is. Then we're gonna take the last of the feather, the Schlappen feather. Tie that in. And follow the fibers backwards, move forward. to one top and the rest of the feather in front, down on the tube. There we go. Tie that in. 3 turns. There we go. Then we're gonna find a UFO disc in silver. Then we're gonna take some super glue. There we go. And take some of the super glue in there to the head. There we go. Take some more turns and trim off the thread. So now we're gonna, if we can get it on. There we go. And we're gonna push it all together. So if there's any gaps in the wing section, it's gonna be pushed together. It looks good. So there we go. Yeah. We can cut off the excess too, and we're gonna make a collar here in the front. So there we go. Take a dubbing needle to expand the hole. There we go. And now it's done. So, quite a nice fly for sea trout in the river at night, or for salmon in Norway, Sweden. Definitely Norway, this color combination is killer up there. So that's the fly. I hope you liked the video. So I'll see you guys in the next one.